Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming here this evening. We have Senator Corker, who is here on a visit to Ukraine. We've had a number of congressional members of Congress here showing their support for the Ukrainian people and support for bringing Ukraine through this very difficult period in its history. With that, let me turn it over to the Senator.
Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you for what you're doing here to fill in with so much activities so much activity that's taking place. I want to thank all of you for coming out today. I came here for one reason after visiting Moldova, and that was to show support to the people of Ukraine and the government that is ushering in the difficult task of transitioning through to a new government and a new election on May the 25th. I am very impressed with this government, the Prime Minister, the officials that are working to try to make the dreams come true of those who sacrificed so much to cause this movement to take place. I just walked through Maidan, saw many of the memorials to the people who lost their lives, those who risked their lives, and the loved ones whose families were disrupted so much, so that the people of Ukraine could have the self-determination, the fairness, the life that they would like to achieve for their families. So it's very moving to be here at this crisis center, so close to something that is so important to the lives of so many here in Ukraine. So again, I'm here to show support. I do believe that while this government has tremendous internal issues to deal with, issues of corruption that are remnants of the Soviet period, issues of creating a market economy, issues of dealing with so many of the problems that exist here relative to energy and other kinds of things that are problems for this country to wrestle with. But I believe that this government has the best chance that any government's had to usher in the change that the people of Ukraine are looking for. The next most important step, and all of you know this, is for there to be a fair and free election on May the 25th. And I know that that's what this government is focused on. I met with some of the leading candidates for president today. I know that that is their focus also. So it seems to me the greatest threat to the people of Ukraine realizing the dreams that began here at Maidan is the external threat of Russia. And one of the reasons that I'm here, it's become very apparent that Russia seems more determined to see this government fail than the West is determined to see this government succeed. I know there's been a lot of support. There've been a lot of people that have come through here, and I know that that is greatly appreciated. And there's no question that America is focused on Ukraine and the West is focused on Ukraine, and the West wishes to see Ukraine be successful in this endeavor. But I think it's evident that right now it's more important to Russia that this movement fail than it is to the West that it succeed. I think that's very unfortunate. And my goal in leaving here is to do everything that I can as one senator to encourage those in my country to be willing to push back more fully. I think the biggest concern that I have is that as we watch what Russia is doing, as we know what they're doing inside eastern Ukraine, as we listen to the comments of their foreign minister today, pulling out incidents like South Ossetia, basically stating that they're willing to use force within this country to ensure that the country is destabilized and that elections do not go on in the appropriate way. I see the West certainly using a lot of rhetoric. What I don't see is the West yet willing to do those things relative to sanctions and those other kinds of things that would extract a price from Russia to keep them from taking those steps that it looks like they're intent on taking. So that is what I go back to the U.S. with. I came here again to show support, and with that I'd be glad to answer questions from the media.
If I could maybe open the questions from the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. My name is Natalia Popovich. I'm one of the co-founders. What do you believe would be the appropriate set of sanctions? Because the feeling here is that Russia has done a lot of the steps which were not properly punished. And now all of the actions that we see in the East are basically the consequence of that. Because if you don't punish, the evil spreads in a way. United States has taken the lead on some of those things, but at the same time, European Union and some of the EU countries have been tagging behind in introducing stricter and more harsh sanctions that could actually make maybe President Putin make different decisions than he's making right now. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I know that I've been to many parts of the world where conflict has existed, and I've talked to numbers of world leaders who continually say that President Putin, especially since August, but over the last period of time, has taken steps, has pushed out, and really not received much pushback in any of the places where that has occurred, and that has emboldened him. And so I think you're right. In fairness, I appreciate the comments that our Vice President made yesterday, the show of support. I certainly appreciate Congress in a bipartisan way passing some economic aid and some loan guarantees and some other kinds of support. But the fact is, there really hasn't been an orchestrated sanctions process put in place where Russia is really paying any price at all. It's been very limited. I realize that to Putin, the best thing that he could do is to separate the European Union and the United States. I understand that. And understand that that creates a degree of reluctance from the United States standpoint to go it alone relative to sanctions and make it look as if there are differences there. I also realize that Europe, there's going to be a blowback from any sanctions, and Europe, no doubt, will pay a bigger price. And some of the economies in Europe certainly are far more dependent on Russia than the United States. But at the same time, I think people in the world do look to the United States for leadership. And I think the kinds of sanctions that need to be put in place now, and I've been saying this for some time, are the sectoral sanctions that actually would cause Russia's economy to pay a price and to cause Putin to lose support within his own country for what is taking place here. I know to Putin, again, Ukraine being that free society with a market economy right on the border is a great threat to him. It's a great threat to him. To Americans, Americans want to see people of Ukraine being able to realize their dreams, but it's at a different level for us. It's about, if you will, self-actualization. It's about people in the world having the same kinds of things that we have in America. To Putin, it's at a whole different level. And I know if the people of Russia see that here in Ukraine there's success towards that end, that's a threat to him. And so it's obvious that today he's willing to take more bold steps than the West has been willing to take to push back. But it's my hope, and I've been talking with the administration and with others, and certainly been talking with people here on the ground, but it's my hope that the next steps by our administration, I think you know they've signed an executive order, the next steps will be those sectoral sanctions. The Russian economy is very fragile. I think you've seen reports recently that many people believe that the Russian economy is beginning to enter a recession. And so a jolt, a pushback on 3 or 4 of the largest banks there, especially the state-owned enterprises, pushback against Gazprom. To me, those kinds of things are the only kinds of things that are going to cause Russia to realize that there is a price to pay. I don't want to be one of those Americans here, though, who is using a lot of rhetoric. I'm just observing. I'm observing the situation. I'm not saying what America is going to do. I'm a United States Senator. I'm a legislator. And that's really up to the executive branch at this time to decide what they're going to do. But my urging to them is that we do take those steps that really cause Russia to pay a price for what they're doing, and to cause Russia to really think about whether at this moment in time with their economy in the state that it's in, is it really worth it to do the things that they're doing in eastern Ukraine, fomenting and trying to destabilize this election. I think everyone acknowledges exactly what's happening. There's no secret here. There's certainly the Geneva Accord has turned out to be nothing but a 30-minute discussion, because certainly it's not being implemented. But it's my hope that the West will begin to understand through the things that it actually does, not what it says, that this is very important, not just to the people of Ukraine, but it's important to Europe. It's been the policy of Americans for the last 60 years that Europe as whole is democratic and free. And what Putin is doing right now, really to fulfill his own individual goals, is threatening that. And hopefully sooner rather than later, before additional bad things happen relative to the sovereignty of this country, hopefully the West will come together and do something that's much stronger.
Thank you. Dan.
Daniel Warner from the Tribune de Genève in Switzerland. Senator, you've mentioned sanctions. We're now up to phase 3, and you've mentioned potentially more. Could you envision, if the situation got more serious, if there was the actual use of armed forces by Russia, that the West, NATO, the United States would react more than sanctions? Is that something that's being prepared?
I don't, look, I'll just be candid. It's not something that is on the front burner. And I think that, you know, Russia understands that. I think the government here in Ukraine understands that. I think it's remarkable, really, the self-restraint that this government has utilized, knowing that what Russia is hoping that they will do is to make a mistake and to use force in a way that Russia can then validate doing some of the things that you just mentioned. So I commend again this Prime Minister and all the ministers around him for the way that they are conducting themselves. But I'll be honest, right now, I don't think the scenario of envisioning boots on the ground is one that is being talked about in a serious manner. And I think, you know, the first step is, again, for the West to understand that, I think the West understands, but for the West to come together and actually not talk tough, but to extract, again, price in Russia that is a price maybe they're not willing to pay, that would cause them to not come in and do those things. You know, if you look at, it's very difficult after the fact. I mean, I'll just be honest, are people today talking about changes, abrupt changes in Crimea? No. It's very difficult to react after the fact. So I think it's important. I think it's important for a round of sanctions that actually push back against Russia. I do not think there are discussions today about boots on the ground, and I know Russia full well understands that.
Comment question here.
Harvey Carroll. I'm at the University of Kentucky Diplomacy and International Commerce School next door there. I've been dealing with politics for about 25, 30 years, making suggestions in this region as a hobby. I've been in country for about 12 years on and off. I've written huge economic plans as well as sanction reports when I was in master's school. I could send you an 18-page report. Sanctions don't work. The end game, yes, it buys some time. It's a first phase diplomacy tool, but in reality it don't work. What the U.S. should do is ask President Putin, is he going to be a president, and go down in history as being a person that is reasonable. Last year he was reasonable. He prevented conflict in Syria by helping bring both Syria and Iran to the table with President Obama and Senator Kerry or Secretary Kerry. Or, Russia has a history of naming people like Catherine the Great, etc. Will Putin go down in history as Putin the pathological liar? He has lied about and undermined Iran and Russia deals. That deal, as we know, CIA has documents that deal was signed between the country of Iran and Russia. Second, the gas deal signed in December with President Yanukovych, he said at an EU summit that he doesn't care who's in power here, that gas reduction was for the Ukrainian people. We now know that's a lie. The little green men in Crimea, we know that's a lie. The Crimea takeover, a lie. Now the stuff that's going on in Eastern Europe. So I think we need to make it clear. And do you feel that we need to make it clear? Is he going to go down in history as Putin the pathological liar, or come back as a president and a world leader that we can deal with?
Yeah. I'm not one of those people that believe conversation with President Putin is going to have much effect on how he views his legacy. So I appreciate hearing from a neighbor. I appreciate the tremendous amount of study that you've done regarding what's happened in this part of the world. But I do not know President Putin. I've met Lavrov and others. I cannot say that I have a lot of personal knowledge, but he appears to be the kind of person that doesn't really respond much to talk. He appears to be the kind of person that pushes out until such a time as he views that the price he's paying is not worth the pushing out that is taking place. I don't think that calculation, that balance to him has yet been received, and I think that he will continue to do the things that he's doing until such a time as he believes the price is too heavy of a one to pay, and I don't think that time has come yet. So again, I could be wrong. There are people that certainly know him much better, but what I've observed is he's a person that responds to action and not discussion.
A question from Ukrainian media. I will translate.
Okay.
Агентство «Укрінформ», Василь Короткий. Вчора в цьому центрі також виступала делегація з Палати представників, і вони говорили, зокрема, про те, що Сполучені Штати намагатимуться забезпечити енергетичну незалежність України. І у зв'язку з цим говорилось про поставки сланцевого зрідженого газу через Європу в Україну в перспективі, про забезпечення сприяння реверсних поставок з Європи, а також про поставки азербайджанського газу. Скажіть, будь ласка, більш детальніше, на якому етапі це? Коли приблизно може Україна отримати цей сланцевий газ? Які кроки вживаються у сприянні з поставками азербайджанського і реверсу з Європи? Дякую.
Thank you.
The question from Interfax, Ukrainian information agency, and it's about the issue that was discussed yesterday here at the Ukraine Crisis Media Center. We had the U.S. congressional delegation. The issue of gas supplies has come up,
Yeah.
and the question basically is, what can the United States do to help Ukraine assist with the three following things? One thing that was discussed is the LNG gas
Right.
and supplies, the reverse supplies of gas from Europe, and the supplies of gas from Azerbaijan. Those were the three sort of alternative routes of how to decrease the dependence of Ukraine on the gas from Russia. So what can U.S. do to help with that?
Yeah, well, while I wish that yesterday when the Vice President was here, he had announced some of the sanctions that I was discussing earlier, I did appreciate, on the other hand, the fact that he mentioned assistance relative to the energy issue. We had a long conversation with the Prime Minister on this very issue. I know it's been something of great focus, especially with Russia jacking up the prices in the way that they have recently, which again is just should be I know that people here in Ukraine understand Russia better than Americans, but again, just an extortive way of dealing with people, very different than the Western values that people in Ukraine are aspiring to have fully embedded in this country. I appreciated the fact that there was discussion about technical assistance relative to the reverse flows. And I know there's a couple of ways of doing that. There's the virtual reverse flow where just not as much is going out because customers downline are not using as much. And then there's the actual reverse flow coming back in. And so I'm glad that we are assisting technically with that. There's been a lot of discussions in the United States about ways we can use the abundance of natural gas that we have to make them available here in this country. And if nothing else, from the standpoint of whether it actually makes it to this country in time or not, lowering the overall cost of natural gas and petroleum in the world by virtue of what we may do by virtue of change in U.S. policy. And there's a lot of support for that among members of Congress to make that happen. But in addition to that, there are people that believe there are reserves in this country, that with some of the shale reserves, that with some of the technological breakthroughs that our country has benefited from, assistance in that way directly here in Ukraine would be helpful too. But I think all of us understand most of these, other than the reverse flow concept, most of these are long-term solutions. I think they send a signal, though, and they begin to cause Russia to recalculate, is this leverage that they have on the people of Ukraine and other members of Europe, is this leverage over time going to disappear, and does it make sense to alter behavior now, knowing that changes may be coming down the road? So again, I think they're important. Other than the reverse flow situation, though, they're not of great magnitude, and I think the people of the government of Ukraine understands that, and I think we understand that too. But again, something that I think is helpful and something we should follow through on.
Last question.
Yes, please. Hold on, just from this here side.
Senator Matthew Stevenson from Harper's Magazine. If after the May elections this year, the government of Ukraine were to petition NATO for fast-track membership, would you in the Senate, if it came to a vote, support that?
Yeah, so it's my sense that there's no desire at present for that to occur. I don't get any sense that I think the government at present and those who, it appears to me, who are seeking office want to continue with this stance of neutrality. But at the same time, I know they want to work closely with our government in a bilateral way to make sure that they are able to operate per NATO standards so that they can have joint engagements with us, and I think that would be very supported.
We have to close, as I understand, according to timing. Thank you so much, Senator.
Let's do one more, the gentleman back here. And it's always the one that you hate getting asked. Yeah.
Here you go.
Yeah.
Well, it's always one that you hate.
No. I thought it was this gentleman over here. But both of you I like.
Charles
I'll reserve judgment until I hear the question. Yeah.
Charles Wang from Beijing Financial Media. My question perhaps is not quite so optimistic. I recall that you said, you observed that this government right now has a better chance than any previous Ukrainian government in ushering in a bright future. I'd like you to comment more specifically what makes you believe that.
Yeah. I really do believe the elected officials that I've met here are committed to that. I am tremendously impressed by the competence of this Prime Minister. I don't know that I've met a leader in an executive branch that is actually in office today that I'm more impressed with than this Prime Minister. I think he has the technical skills to be effective. I think he understands the economic issues that this country is dealing with. I think he understands in his heart the kind of life that the people of Ukraine yearn for. And I think he is committed to doing everything he can to make that happen and to weed out the corruption that, again, is a remnant of, let's face it, a remnant of Soviet Union, a remnant of, and exactly what you see in Russia today on a daily basis. So I think he's committed to that. And I think for that reason, first of all, for anybody to be successful, they have to have the ability to make those things happen, to make the tough choices. Candidly, I live in a country where we don't face problems that come close to the kinds of problems that we had those in the past, certainly, but that come close to the kind of problems that the people of Ukraine are dealing with today. And yet we know we have issues that need to be dealt with, and we're not dealing with them yet. The tough issues of entitlements, of subsidies, of those kind of things that we know we have to change in our country. And yet what I see in this Prime Minister is a willingness with, in spite of the fact that there's an external enemy with 40,000 troops on the border that is intimidating his people, his willingness to go ahead and take these issues head on, to me, is inspirational. So again, we're talking about a human being, and human beings have failings, sometimes in spite of the best intentions that they have, and circumstances sometimes can overwhelm. But I am very, very impressed. I'm impressed with the President. I'm impressed with cabinet members. Again, I was able to sit down today with some of those who are running for president, and again, I think that if a fair and free election can occur on May the 25th, that the international community believes is fair and free, and the country can move beyond this state that it's in. I really do believe, with any support at all from the international community, well, let me put it this way. I don't think any support at all. With strong support from the West, I believe this government has a chance of achieving many, maybe not all initially, but many of those goals, many of those things that people right outside this building died for not long ago. I really believe that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Senator, for being with us. It's an honor to have you at Ukraine Crisis Media Center. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.